everybody, it's me, Dina, and I am doing a educational ASMR video. It's been a really long time, like a significant amount of time since I've done one, and I'm whispering, and I'm checking the whisper on my mic, but I'm whispering it because I know like when I did do educational ASMR videos, people liked it when they were like whispered. But yeah, anyways, I've been a bit nervous to do an educational ASMR video for a while, and that's because like I'm getting messages from my friend to come to a party. Wait, one sec. Okay, I told her I was already in the zone and I'll be there, but I wanted to kind of do this video. Anyways, so I've been a bit afraid to do educational ASMR because of the amount of misinformation that's been surrounding. I'm sorry, it's my cat Stanley, not Boaz, who passed away a little more than a year ago. But my new cat, anyways. I wanted to do one, and I'm a bit afraid of misinformation, so I have linked a bunch of my sources down below because it's important to have those, and I'm also going to probably be quoting from them, like I'm not 100% sure. I have like an outline of some of the papers that like I did on this, so this video will be about the difference between pathological gambling and gambling disorder, and those two happen to have quite the difference. So first of all, I want to say I'm not an expert in this field, but I've studied it a lot in terms of like what I could have. So trigger, like not good trigger warning. This is going to be talking about addiction, not just in gambling, but also about substance abuse addiction and stuff like that, especially with the new criteria that gambling disorder is in. I have another interruption. Alright, so we're good. Okay, so the reclassification of gambling addiction, gambling disorder, and pathological gambling is quite significant, especially when you look at mental health. So, first of all, I want to be talking about why that is. So, to do that, I have to talk about gambling and the DSM. So, for those who don't know, the DSM is and I wrote down just to make sure no misinformation, is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM. It's where your disorders like personality disorders come in, so like they have categories of things. So there's like anxiety disorders, so you have different anxiety disorders such as general anxiety disorder, panic disorder, PTSD, and you're not really supposed to be diagnosed with two of those things in the same category of those disorders, at least from what I know. I think the most popular example are eating disorders. Like if you have been diagnosed with an eating disorder, like anorexia, but you're also making yourself throw up, you will not be diagnosed with both anorexia and bulimia, because those are two separate categories, and they have different diagnostic criteria. So first of all, there's a lot of debate, like whether or not that should be taken seriously. Not that itself, but like the DSM should be taken seriously, or whether or not we need to reevaluate the way disorder in the DSM-5. It's just the latest one. They're coming out with a newer one soon, but for now, this is the latest one. As I record this on January 23rd, and it is the only non-substance addiction under the substance addiction disorders, or like the addictions disorders. So what does this mean? This is a breakthrough, in my opinion, in terms of cognitive thinking and cognitive disorders in psychology. It's a big deal for me, and I think for a lot of other people who study psychology, because it sort of means that the ways that gambling affect us as individuals, or as people who are gambling, are quite similar to those who can affect that. No. Everyone may be able to have one drink. Some people can't stop drinking. Maybe you're able to play around a poker and leave, but some people can't. Oh god, I'm doing this so badly. But it's just interesting that a non-substance has been proven to have the same psychological effects as an actual substance that makes chemical differences in your brain. A high that is natural in a way. And I'm excited because I hope that DSM recognizes stuff like internet addiction and porn addiction too, and that has been up for debate. But okay, I'm rambling a little bit. I guess I'm nervous to talk about it, but alas, we will get into the DSM, gambling disorder in the DSM. So, gambling disorder was recently reclassified from its previous term of pathological gambling. Now, pathological gambling was under the section of an impulse control disorder, sort of similar to something that OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, would be classified as. So, sort of like, you would put a key in your door like a few times, or like, you have to twist your doorknob a few times. I know that's like a very simple, like not great way to talk about OCD, but it is one way to talk about OCD. And having a minute. And yes, with alcohol, which is also in the substance abuse disorder section. But does that make it better or worse than gambling? I'm going to say that I really hate gambling for many reasons. Even before the DSM came out, even though I was quite young. I mean, people who gamble, so statistically speaking, if you look at statistics of people who gamble, their reason for gambling isn't necessarily to get more money. It just sort of becomes a thrill-seeking sort of thing. So there's a really good research paper, which I will link down below, that show the differences between people, all gambling addicts, when they started gambling and their motivations for gambling, versus now when they are addicts, or classified as addicts, or admitted to being addicted, and what their motivations are. And it's never money. It kind of starts off with being money, but then it ends up more being a thrill. And there's also so much behavioral economic stuff that goes into it that makes me like so excited to talk about, but also it is quite sad in a sense. And I don't know, I'm smiling while I say that, but it is also quite distressing. So we're going to talk about those cognitive perceptionary of a personal success inappropriately higher than the objective probability would warrant. The illusion of control is the bias an individual into treating an event of chance as though it can be controlled. Sort of like, so like when you're watching a game, like a sports game, say you bet on a sports game, and you think that you wearing that t-shirt of the person who, like the person who, the team, or I guess person, you could do it with tennis, whatever. I'm sure there's like tennis t-shirts that you have more control over what's going on, or that you have control over what's going on when you roll dice in a gambling situation. Stuff like that is the illusion that you are able to control a situation which is completely out of your control, and this is a cognitive bias because there are no such thing as luck. In that sense, like, you can't control luck. I mean, it's intangible. Like, so that's a big thing that happens to people who have gambling disorder. They suffer from the illusion of control. Another thing that they suffer from is something called discounting losses. So, research from Thomas Gilovich in 1983 suggests that people with pathological gambling, by the way, this is again when it was called pathological gambling and not gambling disorder, and as I mentioned before, those are two different things, tend to find ways that discredit their losses. So, for example, in a game of chance, say like you're even flipping a coin, when you lose it's a fluke. Like, when you lose it's a fluke, but when you win you're on a lucky streak. This sort of thing. While indulging in this bias, pathological gamblers, again, this is just the terminology that was used at the time. Gambling disorder, people who suffer from gambling disorder, also perceive their win as internal factors, such as a skill rather than luck. So say we use the whole coin flipping thing again. Oh, I have a skill, I know when the coin is going to flip to heads or tails or whatever you may be. In roulette, it might also be similar. And then you just think that you're actually on a luck streak, and then when that luck runs out, you just kind of dismiss it as a loss, which is why it's called a discounting loss. And Griffiths also said that at a behavioral level, a near miss may have the same kind of conditioning effect on behavioral as success, and I feel like those two things together are very, very interesting. How we describe losses and wins, and this also like sort of relates to the behavioral economic theory of wins and losses. I mean, I don't exactly recall what the theory was called. It's sort of like, if you find $5 on the street, you're like, oh, cool. But if you lose $5, like if it fell out of your pocket or something, you're like, oh, and you're more pissed when you lose the $5 than when you find $5 on the street. I feel like those have some sort of similarities to it. Another cognitive bias is something called loss chasing. It's the psychology equivalent of the economic, and it's my favorite, sunk cost fallacy theory. I can talk about sunk cost fallacy theory for a while. So loss chasing is a big thing, especially people who have gambling disorder. So say you're at a poker table, and by the way, I know very little about gambling, and the most gambling that I do know, I do like to play online poker with fake money, may I say. I wouldn't use real money on those things, but so say you bet, I don't know, $40 on a hand. You'll go around betting $40 on a hand, and then someone ups it to 80. Someone raises you to $80. And even though you don't think your hand is like worth $80, you've already spent that $40, right? You might as well spend another $40. Or you can put your hand to rest because it's the sunk cost. You've already done it. The thing is, with people who have lost chasing. Yeah, that's what it's called. And Ginsbury in 2018 said, where players on a losing streak believe a win is own or due. So, that you believe a win is supposed to happen because you've lost so many times. This could be true for all sorts of gambling. Again, it's just a cognitive bias that comes into it. And that even calling on a higher bet might increase your chances of winning. This also comes with loss chasing. Like, oh, I've already lost so much, I might as well buy higher because at this point, the logic of the math and everything behind what you've been doing, it's gone. So, what does that result into? And statistically speaking, you're not probably gonna make more money if you bet more money, but it is a fallacy, cognitive bias, again, that is very prevalent in people with gambling disorder. Another thing is the representativeness heuristic, and this is found in the Gambler's Fallacy and the hot-end effect, and assumes that short sequences of events should represent a larger distribution of outcomes. This is also by Ginsbury's paper. Both of these biases result in flawed thinking pattern. One assumes that independent events, like rolling 2 dice in a row, are related and have effect on one and another. This is statistically improbable. So if I rolled 2 dice that were in favor of what I wanted to roll it as, again, you're not talking to a great gambler here, but the chances of, so we all know that like rolling a dice, they're independent events. So mathematically speaking, they're independent events. Each time you roll a dice, each time you flip a coin, everything is independent events. They're all independent events. But each time you do it. So if you roll a dice, let's say like a 2 and a 2, maybe people with gambling disorder might have the idea that there's no chance it's going to be a 2 again, even though the chances of it being a 2 again is still a 1 in 6 chance. Just because it happened before doesn't mean it's not going to happen again. And all the silly impulse control. People with gambling disorder, obviously, not obviously, but unfortunately, have a problem with income. Maybe they probably do have a problem with income, but with impulse control disorder, which also goes back